facts history video. If you enjoy educational style ASMR content, then you're definitely in the right place. And today, we'll be looking at a brief summary of World War I. This video in no way will be detailed, as it would take a very long time to look at this particular subject area in detail. But what we have here today is what I think is a summary that just about anyone can follow, relax to, and enjoy. I also have some general facts about World War I to share with you towards the end of the video as well. Also, I must warn you that my pronunciation of certain names and words may not be perfect, but I will, as always, do my best. So with that being said, it's time to get comfortable, lie back, relax, and let yourself drift away as we find out more about World War I today. World War I was known as the Great War and was a global war that originated in Europe and would eventually consume many nations throughout the world. It lasted from July 29th, 1914 until November the 11th, 1918, and led to more than 70 million military personnel being deployed throughout the world. And this is why here in the UK we call November the 11th Remembrance Day, as we remember those who fought in not only World War I, but also World War II, and who sadly lost their lives. It was one of the largest wars in history, and also one of the deadliest. 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians died as a direct result of the war. Other genocides and the 1918 influenza pandemic, known as the Spanish flu, caused at least 50 million more deaths. And I think that it's an astonishing amount of casualties, and what really stands out to me is how many were innocent civilians who died, as well as soldiers, of course, but the ratio of civilians to soldiers does shock me. And we also have a brief mention of the Spanish flu, which was another significant historical event that has been talked about quite a lot within the last couple of years due to the coronavirus pandemic. It was just one of the worst times in history, I believe, to have been alive due to the combination of the World War and the Spanish flu outbreak. On the 20th of June 1914, Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb Yugoslav nationalist, assassinated the Austro-Hungarian heir, Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, leading to the July crisis. In response, on the 23rd of July, Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia. Serbia's reply failed to satisfy the Austrians, and the two moved to a war footing. While this may be one of the common beliefs for the cause of World War I, it is still debated. Tensions had been rising throughout Europe, with various arms races and alliances. The great powers of Europe were divided into two coalitions. The Triple Entente consisted of France, Russia, and Britain. The Triple Alliance consisted of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. These alliances caused a domino effect when Germany declared war on France and began to march throughout Belgium. Within weeks, the entire continent had declared war, with both coalitions adding members as the war progressed. Germany fought the war on two fronts against France and Russia. Their initial idea was to use the bulk of their army on the Western Front and defeat France in 4 weeks before Russia could mobilize. This plan would become known as the Schlieffen Plan. An essential element to this plan was to gain free passage through Belgium to quickly pounce on France. But Belgium refused to give them passage, to which Germany invaded. The invasion set off a chain of events that led to France and Great Britain declaring war on Germany by August 4th, 1914. 8 days later, the French and British declared war on Austria-Hungary. On August the 23rd, Japan sided with the Entente and began seizing German possessions in China and the Pacific. In November 1914, the Ottoman Empire entered the war on the side of the Alliance, which opened a front in the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, and the Sinai Peninsula. European colonial empires also became vulnerable, which spread the conflict into the continents of Africa, the Indian Ocean, and further across the globe. The Entente and its allies would become known as the Allied Powers, while Germany, Austria-Hungary, and their allies became known as the Central Powers. The Kingdom of Bulgaria United States would enter the war in 1917. This would become a major issue for the United States during the election of 1916 and eventually the election of 1920. Germany's advance was halted at the First Battle of the Marne, and by the end of 1914, the war became one of attrition. Long trench lines were created, and the battle lines did not change much until 1917. Russia began to have internal problems. The February Revolution replaced the Tsarist autocracy with the provisional government. Discontent from the war grew and led to the October Revolution, which created the Soviet Socialist Republic. This caused Russia to exit World War I. This allowed the transfer of large numbers of German troops from the east to the Western Front, resulting in the German March 1918 offensive. This offensive was initially successful, but the Allies rallied and drove the Germans back in their 100 Days offensive. Bulgaria was the first Central Power to sign an armistice. The Armistice of Salonika on September the 29th, 1918. On October the 30th, the Ottoman Empire capitulated, signing the Armistice of Mudros. On the 4th of November, the Austro-Hungarian Empire agreed to the Armistice of Villa Gaiosti. With its allies defeated, the revolution at home, and the military no longer willing to fight, Kaiser Wilhelm abdicated on November the 9th, and Germany signed an armistice on November the 11th, 1918. World War I was a significant turning point in the political, cultural, economic, and social climate of the world. The war and its immediate aftermath sparked numerous revolutions and uprisings. The Big Four, Britain, France, the United States, and Italy, imposed their terms on the defeated powers in a series of treaties agreed at the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, the most well known to be the German Peace Treaty, the Treaty of Versailles. So guys, that is a brief summary of World War I. I hope you were able to follow along if you're new to this subject area, as I am. I thought it was a very interesting overview of one of the biggest events in our history, and to conclude first one. More than 65 million men fought in the war. Dogs were used in the trenches to carry messages. A well-trained messenger dog was considered a very fast and reliable way to carry messages. It was the first major war where airplanes and tanks were used. Of the 7.8 million soldiers from Austria-Hungary who fought in the war were either injured or killed. When the British first invented tanks, they called them landships. Some Americans disagreed with the United States' initial refusal to enter World War I, and so they joined the French Foreign Legion or the British or Canadian Army. A group of US pilots formed the Lafayette Escadrille, which was part of the French Air Force and became one of the top fighting units on the Western Front. The terrorist group responsible for assassinating Archduke Ferdinand was called the Black Hand. Famed scientist Marie Curie helped to equip fans with X-ray machines that enabled French doctors to see bullets in wounded men. These fans were called Petit Curie, meaning little Curies, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Petit Curie. Germans were the first to use flamethrowers in World War I. Their flamethrowers could fire jets of flame as far as 130 feet. During World War I, British tanks were initially categorized into males and females. Male tanks had cannons, while females had heavy machine guns. The total cost of World War I for the US was more than $30 million. German trenches were in stark contrast to British trenches. German trenches were built to last and included bunk beds, furniture, cupboards, water tanks and faucets, as well as electric lights and doorbells. During World War I, the Germans released about 68,000 tons of gas, and the British and French released 51,000 tons. In total, 1,200,000 soldiers on both sides were gassed, of which 91,000 Frankfurters, which were named after Frankfurt, Germany, were called Liberty sausages, and dachshunds became Liberty dogs. Schools stopped teaching German, and German language books were burned. So there we have it, guys. That is just about it for this video on the history of World War I, with some additional general facts as well. I hope you enjoyed this brief history lesson, and if you did enjoy it, be sure to drop a like down below, post a comment to help support the channel, and let me know your thoughts on World War I and some other historical events that interest you, and maybe in the future we can cover some of those. Also, consider subscribing if you haven't done so for more history content in the near future. And if you're interested in more related content, you can check out the links on screen. But a huge thank you for joining me today, and until next time, rest easy, sleep well, and I hope to see you again very soon for another video, and goodbye for now.